principle of locking things together. My hand, once it's, I actually use kind of my index finger as like a bar and work everything off of that. Like it's always clamped on there. My finger always has like two calluses, one for like it covers 2 strings, sometimes 3 strings. Lock my hand on so that as it falls onto the bass, automatically you cover 4 frets with 4 fingers like that. So that's your standard position, always locked in there. Sometimes my thumb is on top, sometimes behind. I'm never sure which is really right or not.
Pursuing that, would it be pretty useful to use a chromatic scale to develop your left hand?
Yeah. What's a chromatic scale? No,
4 notes in a row.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing that I do as an exercise. You can do that backwards, forwards, start it from the middle, out, or stagger it. Any configuration you can think of. But what I do basically is exercise my fingers so that any combination is worked out in exercise. And also I do exercising without my right hand sometimes, because you'll find if occasionally you do an exercise with just one hand independently, your right hand alone or left hand alone, if you watch your playing, sometimes you'll notice that your left hand will cover for your right and vice versa.
You can focus maybe more as you separate them too.
Yeah, I focus on who's doing what, whereas they cover for each other's mistakes, kind of. If your left hand is weak in an area, your right hand will kind of beef up the move there to make up for it. So what I try to do sometimes, not all the time because you'll lose your coordination between hands, but work on my left hand alone just to make sure I see what it's doing. You can feel the weak spots in it, especially when you do exercises like that are across, playing all those notes. I feel, this is definitely the weaker finger, so I definitely feel that. So I'll work on that across the neck, like that. And again, I play mostly in patterns, so this is the pattern, all 4 fingers across all 4 strings on 4 frets. Now you notice that when you're actually playing music, you're going to have to get up to stretch like that.
Of course.
You probably actually wouldn't, in most music you'd never stretch more than that, really, than 4. Than however many frets that is, 5 frets or whatever it is. That's where it comes into play how I actually, musically what I play. I've concentrated mostly, as we've been talking about what to play, because it's pretty much my philosophy. I'd rather not show people notes, show them the notes that, and scales. You can get that out of any book. Bach wrote it all down 100 years ago, 200 years ago, so there's really no point in me going over what scales, because I really don't know them anyway. But what I concentrate in mostly is just my hands and how they work, so that's kind of what the purpose of all this is. And the thing I do for my right hand is I basically do, in all my musical playing, there's only 3 patterns. I'm a pattern player, and there's only 3 patterns. The first pattern is 2 whole step. Whole step, whole step. The next pattern is a whole step and a half step. And the other pattern, third, next, is a half step and a whole step. So that's all 3 patterns of major scale.
Right.
So whenever you're playing a major scale, those 3 patterns will be in there. And so if you practice and exercise those 3 patterns in every conceivable manner on one string, it would stand to reason, theoretically, that you could eventually parlay that into being able to play any scale anywhere with fluidity.
Covering all the modes and all the diatonic possibilities.
Well, there you go with those music words again there. Diatonic meaning?
Meaning just a normal 7-note scale, like a major scale.
Yeah,
generating all the modes that go with it.
I'm not even kidding. I really don't know what that means. But I know I'll probably play some diatonic stuff
Absolutely.
here. Absolutely. No. I played some diatomaceous stuff here earlier. But what basically we're doing, here's the 2 patterns. I'll show how it works. Here's the 2 patterns. There's one of them.
Right.
That's the other one. Now whenever I do a scale, like a C major or G major scale, actually it only goes...
Right, before you hit the octave.
Right, but I'll extend it across all notes that I can play of that scale in that position. So that would include that F sharp. So that's all the notes of the G major scale
In
in
that
that position.
position.
Exactly.
Yes.
So then you move up to the next. That's the other pattern of the two whole
Exactly.
steps. It's all of that one. Did I do anything diatonic yet?
They're all diatonic. You're on safe ground.
So
And that's
that
back to an octave higher.
Exactly. So if you notice, if you want to, whoever's watching this puts their tape in reverse, or whatever, only 3 patterns were included in all those.
Right.
Various groupings of those patterns, but they're all 2 whole step and a half step and a whole step. That's
Exactly.
all that there is. And it's funny that of all the music, all Western music, which is in basically a major scale, or even the minor key, which is a relative minor, I know
Right.
about that a little bit,
Yeah.
it's only those 3 patterns. Until you get into like harmonic minors and then
With
other
the odd intervals in it.
odd scales that
Yes.
that odd people probably think of. So
What about your rocking on the bar technique that you use with your left
rocking
hand?
on the bar thing, I used to do that when I was in an old band. We played in the bars and we'd always get out on the bar. And no, just kidding. Rocking on the bar technique. That sounds like something a band would do in a bar. But what we're actually referring to there is it's kind of a barring technique. So you actually play with this part of your finger. So you cover, the string is on the tip and then this middle part. So we got to get us that little snap of that joint. So that little hula dance kind of thing there.
It's like a hinge almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or a collapsing kind of effect.
Yeah, so it's real handy to just get more notes. So again, economy of motion. So you're not moving and using fingers more than you have to, and you're getting the most out of the smallest amount of movement. And so, to use it. Look at, there's millions of notes coming out there, but it's like, there's hardly any movement. Actually, I want to do it. With that barring technique. And after a while, you get calluses right there,
I'll bet.
which is different than the callus there. So
Again, this involves some recovery muscles, doesn't it?
it's a different muscle because it involves a muscle that makes your finger push down and then all of a sudden snap.
Right.
Get this little snapping thing. Some people's fingers just don't do it. Some people's fingers, I don't know, I guess maybe they do if they work on it long enough, but I've seen some people have a real hard time with it. But it's if you can do it, it's a real cool way to get, if you really get good at it, you can get so that snappy, you can actually hammer down with it without actually playing the note. You really get that snap wailing down on that thing. So it's a real handy thing, and it really helps me out a lot of my playing. I use it a lot, just to make up for lack of a finger being there. It's real handy.
I understand recently you went to Japan as a soloist. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I went over there on the auspices of Yamaha, and they did, matter of fact, the TV commercial, that I did with Yamaha. They ran that before the show and everything like that. I did a couple of neat, like the double tap thing. I used a lot in the commercial.
Now let's turn it up.
Yamaha has been a great help to me in a lot of aspects of my career. And they sent me over to do some bass clinics, and it was really funny because, they do a lot of like jazz guys clinics, but they don't do too many rock or pop guys. So they didn't really know what to expect, and like the places were all like packed and everything, and it was really wild. Kids were screaming and yelling. So it was really cool to just go out there alone, no drums, no guitar, no vocals, no nothing. Just go out and play bass.
Hey, look at that.
cool experience. Japanese people were so incredibly great to me. It's really like being on a different planet there with different language and everything is different. So you have extra strength, so you can play bass with big fat strings. So you need the two. It's not like this. It's like this.
今ビリーがやってたようにこのように指を、することによって、一本の指で弾くよりは力が入って、ベースの弦を、弾くことができるということです。
どうもありがとう。ございました。I think the interesting thing about Japanese audiences is they really appreciate that soul blues influence on music. And Japanese audiences also can like many kinds of music. Not like in America, it's just, I like only metal, you know, or I will listen only to dance, or I will not listen to anything else but, you know, it's like they listen to everything. Go to a Whitney Houston show, then to a Metallica show, you know, so it is possible to do. I mean, myself, I like a lot of different acts, so it's really interesting to see that. I wish they do that in America, you know.
What about some of your double-handed techniques?
Well, all my techniques are double-handed because I got to use both hands.
I mean the tap-on
Okay,
style.
I know what you mean. All right.
Trick question.
Yeah, right. Well, that actually developed a long time ago when I saw Billy Gibbons with ZZ Top. And when he did that, I thought, oh, great, you can... For, I don't know, in one of their ZZ Top songs we used to do in the old bar band. That's where it kind of came from, and then I realized that after that you could, wow, you can hit that note, and you could even get more off it like that. And initially it was meant to just kind of enhance what the whole band was doing. It eventually turned into kind of a solo thing.
You use two fingers, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. That's the one thing that makes it different from a lot of guitar players. I see a lot of guitar players, as soon as they do this tapping thing, and bass players too, they do this like real lightweight, single finger little thing where they flip the note off. Now here's already the huge disadvantage. That first of all, your arm isn't anchored anywhere.
Right.
So if you're running across a 60-foot stage, like I said before, or even in a bar and people are throwing beer on you, stuff like that, you're never gonna find out where you are, and your hand isn't gonna be. You're not gonna really know where you are if you got nothing to really lock to. You're not gonna know where your hand is. So I do the old thumb again, locked on somewhere, like on the edge of the neck. Usually is a good spot. And also another thing I do, instead of just lightly doing it with one finger, the wrong way, which is down like that, that's just not a normal way for your hand to move. So clamp this finger down on top of it, because on bass, as I said before, it's a real strength instrument, and you really need a lot of strength to put as much into it as possible, so as much comes off of your instrument. You don't have to depend on your amp and all this electronic stuff to make your sound come out. You got to make things read loudly off the instrument itself alone.
Physically.
Yes, exactly. So the double finger really gives you a chance to, knock it right off the neck if you want, really gives you a chance to really hit down really hard. It gives you way more strength. I mean, if you try it against your hand, it's way more strength down like that. You're going to really need that strength to make it sound loud. So it doesn't slow you up at all.
Now when you do phrases like that, are you crossing fingers?
Oh yeah, sometimes I'll get this finger behind. See, because it's all you're doing when you're tapping, for anybody that doesn't know about it, is, you know, if you're playing a line, you've got like these notes that you're playing. Well, you just move this finger in and play those notes for these fingers. So you're like, you can actually do a double on one finger, a trill like that. I used to drive keyboard players crazy because they couldn't figure out how I was doing that in the early days. So you're hitting down, pulling off, hit down, pull off, down, off, down, off.
That's an interesting technique.
And you can move it too. And then move out of the... See how the thumb is always right there?
Right, an anchor point.
That way I'll always know that I'm going to hit right on that G and I get that real strength thing. Because I've just, again, I've seen so many guys go out on stage with this incredible technique, you can't hear it. You can't, it doesn't read because there's no strength behind it. Always, you know, everybody spends too much time practicing at home alone. You should be out really with a band playing live and getting the kind of experience you really need to know what works and what doesn't. Because there's a purpose for learning all this stuff. And it isn't necessarily to sit in your bedroom and use it, you know, for whatever you're going to use it for. But the purpose of it is to perform and communicate and create music. And in order to do that, for my money, you got to do it live. So a lot of these techniques are meant, particularly, there may be a lot of other techniques that work very effectively, but this is meant to get out on stage and use under hot lights, with no monitors, with feedback, with everything.
Something you can rely on.
Exactly. So again, like just a couple of moves, like a...
Oh, wait, I saw you reaching down there. Now, what exactly was that all about?
Well, let me think now. Oh, okay, so if I was going to get... I need that note there. It's just an idea of how...
Hands crossing over.
Yeah, it's an idea of how things kind of get invented, you know, indiscriminately. They just come up. Instead of now, my arm is tucked into my body and I'm doing this position. Now if I need that note down there, this hand is free, it's not doing anything. Right. Now do I change my whole arm position to stretch down and get that? Or can I keep it in the same place and use that? Yeah. Way easier move.
More efficient, isn't it?
And it looks better too. So you go over here. I mean, people are like, whoa, what the hell was that? But actually, it's way easier to do. Sometimes some things are good because they make it look harder than it actually is, but sometimes they're actually useful. Like over the neck things. When I first did that, when I first went over the neck, I found that it was easier for me to get those two harmonics there than like this, because your hands curve this way. When you put them over the neck, they flatten out. So you want that flat for those harmonics like that. So it always tended to flatten out, be a little easier to do, even though everybody thought it was total showboat. It actually had a purpose there to be used. So again, so when you go behind like that, sometimes there is a use for it. And there's all kinds of ways you can do hammer-ons, as long as you understand what notes you're going for. The basics of it are to get that real strong, solid blast on that. So if you can do that, then your choice of notes is totally up to you, whatever you end up wanting to do. It's kind of a double. What's happening
So there we're dealing adjacent strings?
Yeah, we're dealing with a couple techniques in a row there. So what's happening when I pull off this finger, this string with this finger, because there's so much strength behind it, with that other finger on there, it hits the string underneath it, and it actually plays that note. So you actually
get... Almost like a rake?
Yeah, it is actually a rake, and it ends up as kind of a half rake, half hammer-on. So you're going to have to coin a word here. We don't want a raker-on or a ham-ache or whatever, or a ham-hock maybe. So you get this like flurry of notes.
Sounds like almost like flamenco guitar.
Or flamingo guitar. Then you have to do that on one leg though. So you get like, that's just kind of an inadvertent technique that comes from applying a lot of strength to your hands. And once you just, my whole purpose in a lot of my exercises and moves is just to create a machine out of my hands. So they do, you know, what they have to do on their own. And I can just kind of direct them from another spot in my mind, you know, so I don't have to really think about what I'm playing. Once all the exercises I show with the left hand and all the right hand stuff, once you build up your hands to a good machine, you can stop thinking about it, because when you think, when you're playing, as you probably well know, you're lost.
So you're talking about learning your left hand patterns, your right hand patterns, and finally putting it all together to the point where you don't have to think about it.
Yeah. As I said, when I found out all the things I was doing, it was only after I had actually done them for a long time that I actually sat down and figured out, oh, my finger's on the other side there. No wonder. Because naturally, when I'm playing live and the band is real loud, you can't hear anything, and I'm pressing out as hard, the natural thing you want to do is press harder. So out of nowhere, this finger just came around and started doing it like that.
To the help of its assistance of the
next door neighbor, you might as well help him out, you know. So, you know, it kind of naturally occurs like that, and it's kind of a natural evolution of thing. And so then, again, a lot of this stuff began, I played in a three-piece band for almost my whole life, and so we always had to cover for other players. So I would, the hammering things, like in Schizoid Man, we used to play by King Crimson, that one, there's a soprano sax trill right in the middle of like, that, so I had to get
filling
that
in the
there.
missing part.
Yeah, so I always had to fill in the extra guitarist or keyboard player. So that's where things like, always at a double octave.
Yes.
Basically.
That almost sounds like a pianistic technique.
Yeah, it's kind of a, well, if you locked your...
Or a drum pattern.
Yeah, it's
something
it's drum patterns, whatever you might want it to be. Well, it's basically just drum rudiments tapped down. Have you ever see a piano player when they do like octaves? Sure. They kind of lock their hand in that little octave thing so that their fingers will always hit. And so I kind of do the same thing. Again, trying to, it kind of looks kind of Star Trek-ish, I know, but lock my fingers together like that, so it's an octave.
Right.
And then this hand, the same thing down here. It's not the same position for me personally, just because that finger doesn't fit there as well. But I try to double up on this finger to get that low note to sound really well, and I just hit like if you're just riding along on an A.
Just straight ahead groove.
A little more interesting way of doing it rather than...
More colorful, more energetic.
Yeah. And they can move it around too. And any drum rudiment you end up doing. And then from that I got into fifths, where you can actually tap fifths too, where you do... individually tap, and you can also individually tap the octaves too, in any kind of rhythmic pattern you can think of, and then you can get into all kinds of...
Now, in that case, what's going on?
Actually, it's just a E minor chord. So I take these two with that, and take these two outside ones.
Aha! Break up the chord.
Exactly. Now. So anything you can imagine chord-wise, anything you can imagine chord-wise, just in your mind split it up, and it's easy to experiment with. But again, rather than show you what notes to play, or try and have people, I mean, who wants to play the stuff I'm playing anyway? But rather than try and show you what notes to play, I'd much rather be able to show people how it is that's gotten, and let people use their own imagination to come up with their own moves and stuff. So if you understand the idea of that strength, the rhythmic thing, the attack, be able to hit down on the strings to get a good, good solid, keeping it on the neck at all times, of course. So anything you can imagine you can do in there. So once you get the actual hand technique down, because so many people try and show people what what notes to play, but I think if you really know the technique, you can come up with your own notes. Probably be a little hipper,
And basically, that's what we've been covering is techniques, and hopefully that they'll lead to the creation of a new style, as they did in you with somebody else, using the same foundation type techniques.
For someone to take whatever they want from me, and hopefully they'll come up with something better and. Expand on a thing. Because every time like I said, I saw Billy Gibbons do I thought, how great, and that eventually turned into all that stuff. Well, actually, all I got was one little thing from him. So hopefully, you know, whatever anybody gets off me, they can extrapolate. I love using that word.
Yes.
From that, you know, any kind of you know, concoction they can imagine.
One last point. What about tapping harmonics? I've seen you do that a lot.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, what that is once you get your technique down to the point where you're really hitting strongly, almost anything you hit is going to come out as a harmonic. Anywhere along the string, too.
In that case, you're playing the overtone series basically along the string, aren't you?
Is that what that is?
Tapping out the notes that would be the open harmonics?
Yeah, I guess that is. That's actually a scale, I guess. It's
right
all along. So if you just hit the bass anywhere, there's a thing in a Eat 'em and Smile record, in Going Crazy. People always think, what in the world is that?
Yeah, what was that?
It's the simplest thing in the world. Just again, kind of a drum rudiment thing, only tapping harmonics. You get a little distortion and compression on your bass, it brings those harmonics come ringing, ripping out of there. Get them out like that. It works everywhere.
In addition to banging them out that way, you also do a pinch harmonic.
Yeah, that thing I just did there. Again, that's a Billy Gibbons idea. I stole that from him. He's great.
He's something, doesn't he? Still is.
Yeah, he sure is. I think he uses a peso or a quarter or something for a pick.
Metallic.
And so when the pick goes past the string, the soft part of his thumb touches it, and he gets the harmonic. So since I don't use a pick, and the only thing I have hard in my hands, well, you could do a lot with that, but I won't anyway. The only thing I have in my hands that I can use like that is my fingernails. So I use that as the pick with my soft part of my thumb up against it. So actually, if you want to, I don't know if you can see there now, I just get kind of a. See that? So the advantage of that is you get a real power to that real. So live, you got Riemann distortion and everything. You just get those kill harmonics that just watch, you know, people drop in the crowd. It's unbelievable.
Could you tell us, in your opinion, what should a good bass solo do?
Well, like any solo, it should be an element of the song. It should be an extension of the song. Also an expression of the individual's spot in the band, in the song. It should be connected. A lot of solos are kind of non sequitur these days. A lot of guys are just riffing mania without any real connection to the song. The guitarist I'm working with now, Paul Gilbert, is a good example of someone who can just scream on his instrument when it comes time to knowing a song and playing within the context of the song. You know, he amazes me. The kid is 22 years old, you know, and he's really an inspiration to me, you know, as a player. He used to come see Tallis and sit out in the audience, and his band used to open up for us in Pittsburgh. Now to be working on it. It was really interesting to see the evolution he's taken. And I think he's gone ahead so fast because he really understands the value of a song. So therefore, a soloist, especially a bass player, you'll find generally most of the band's going to have to come down in order for a bass player to solo, because you can't necessarily cut through sound like a guitarist can. Guitar is higher pitch. So when things back off, you'll find you're more work directly with a drummer, or when things turn down, or by yourself. So you have to really, therefore, know even more of the elements of the song to be able to keep the idea and spirit of the song there while everyone else is gone. You know, so it's even more important. Where a guitarist can solo, can kind of step out of it a little bit more because the whole band is moving around behind them and they're holding it together with them. When the bass player does a solo, it's like, you know, you're standing there naked, you know, so you have to really come up with something, so to speak. And so what I generally do is what I know about the modes and keys and things like that. I try and just get real familiar with a key and the moves of a song, kind of stay with it. And you don't necessarily have to go speed demon craze to have a good solo. Some of the most effective solos and bass lines, the most memorable ones, are not all that complicated or you know, complex or wild. You know, it's just they're basically element of the song. You know, if you hear like a
Sure.
You know what song that is already. You know,
Cream.
so many bands. You know, like oh well, I won't get into a million examples here, but you know, just to give an idea what the song is, the bass should really carry it, and like you know, Stump the Band, it will play in a bass line. You should be able to tell what the song is from the bass line. That's how much the song should contain the bass line. It should be, you know, where nowadays you could never play Stump the Band with just the bass line.
Right.
What song is this? You know, it could be one of 100,000 songs that are out there now, because they're all, that's what the bass line is in most of them, you know. So you move around a little bit, and I think that's the element that you have to have in solos. And as I said before, all the fast, wild stuff that a lot of people focus in on certain players that do that stuff, and that's really cool, and it's fun as a riot to do. I love doing it. I'll do it for the rest of my life. But just understand that it's only a small percentage of playing. Major portion of your playing is right with that drummer, just wailing away with that guy, just moving. When he moves, you move. When he breathes, you breathe. You know, when he blinks, you blink. And I've really worked with drummers a lot, where no matter what we do, it happens together. Even things totally off the top of our head. You know, you really have a magic with the drummer when you can just all of a sudden, you know, just be playing along and just take a quick left turn, and there he is, like right next to you. Yeah, I'm still here with you, you know. So, or he can do the same thing, and you're right with him. You know, that's really the true test. So anyway, getting back to soloing. You can go as wild as you want, and some of the techniques and stuff and ideas, I hope that's a building block for a lot of people soloing. But I hope it's also a building block to understand the bass as a whole instrument, rather than just dung, 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 you know, or as just a flailing maniac thing. It's all of those things, you know.
Would the same hold true for an unaccompanied bass solo?
Well, for an unaccompanied bass solo, you're pretty much free. I mean, you're free to do whatever you feel like.
Do you look
for
structure, though? Do you look for
memory?
I
kind of stick around in a certain area, move around, get an idea of things, build little things up. As I said, most of my stuff's come from playing live, and I've thought it up on the spot. Most of my solos, it was just like, solo time, go, and who knows what was going to come out. The downside of that is sometimes it'd be like, oh, it was a little bit too experimental tonight there, Bill, so, you know, I don't know. And the upside of it, once in a while, you would hit the nail right on the head, and it would be total magic. challenge of, you know, going out on a limb and seeing if you can make it happen. But unaccompanied solos are great. But, you know, it depends on your audience and what kind of music you're doing. In a country and western band, I don't think you'd be doing too many unaccompanied bass solos, you know. You know, I don't think Whitney Houston's bass player would be doing unaccompanied bass, you know, like that. But, you know, in other kinds of music, that's the case. And if it's entertaining enough, you know, it can be valid. But I think bottom line is entertainment on it too, you know. And musical technique is underneath communication. Communication is first, technique comes second. So if you're communicating, you're doing it, no matter what your technique is.
One, two, three.
Now available from Cherry Lane, Billy Sheehan Bass Secrets transforms your technique into powerful performances. Billy explains application and presentation. In-depth interviews with Wolf Marshall cover working in a band setting, and extensive footage with drummer Pat Torpey from Billy's band, Mr. Big, shows how a dynamic rhythm section functions in studio and on stage. Also available from Cherry Lane, Rock with the Pros. Cherry Lane's music folios feature note-for-note transcriptions of the best music ever recorded. Standard notation and tablature versions of the hottest hits and rock classics include tips on how to get the same sound you hear on the record. Guitar, bass, and drum editions let you play it like it is. Where there's smoke, there's guitar recordings. All new material by Leslie West, Billy Sheehan, Jennifer Batten, and others, along with the latest releases by Randy Coven and Blues Saraceno. The hottest instrumentals from the hottest guitarists around, guaranteed rock and roll. And it's all from the same people who bring you the best-selling guitar magazine in America, Guitar for the Practicing Musician. Articles on the biggest bands and the best players in the business, updates on the newest equipment, interviews, posters, and about $30 worth of sheet music every month. Subscribe now and save. For more information on any of these products, call us at 1-800-331-5269.